Welcome to The Locked Door, where we unlock the untold stories of those living behind bars and the loved one who stand by them. I'm your host, Sigrid, and today's episode is going to dive deep into what it means to wait for someone behind bars and the realities of prison labor. We'll begin with a personal segment that is sort of my prison wife diary. Today we'll talk birthdays and milestones and how it is to celebrate without the person who means the most to you. After that, we'll shift to a new segment, Mythbuster, and uncover some hard truth about the prison labor system and how it affects the lives of incarcerated individuals. Before we dive into the larger issues, let's start with the Prison Wife Diary segment, a glimpse into the reality of life as a prison wife, starting with a recent birthday that carried more weight than celebration. I probably need a jingle or something for the Prison Wife Diary, but anyway. It's funny how birthdays have a way of making us reflect on time. Another year passed, another year spent waiting. I turned 43 in September, and while most people look forward to cake and celebration, mine feels more like a quiet day of remembrance. I don't have my family around, and it's been 10 birthdays without Alan by my side. Each one feels different, but no less difficult. I always find myself thinking back on the way birthdays used to be, when things were simpler, when I didn't have to balance celebration with this constant feeling of absence. One of the hardest part about these days isn't just the fact that Alan isn't here physically, but the weight of the milestone we're missing together. Birthdays are those markers in life where we celebrate not just getting older, but getting through another year, and doing that alone feels hollow. It's like celebrating with one hand tied behind your back. I sometimes catch myself thinking about what we'd do if you were here. Probably something small and simple, but meaningful. Maybe a movie night or a long walk on the beach because we're in Jacksonville after all. Um, I don't know, simple things, but things that feel impossible now, but would be just so easy. It's funny how the things you once took for granted become these distant, unattainable dreams. Even a hug, a simple touch, because something you long for. And that's the reality of this life. The small, everyday comforts that most couples share without a second thought are the ones we dream of the most. It's not just the big milestones that we miss out on, but the little, seemingly insignificant moments. Those are the ones that stay with you and remind you of what's been taken away. My birthday is usually a regular day. I work and try to think of something else. But this year I took the day off, brought my son to school. I just wanted to relax despite the mountain of work and things I had to do. That would have been it without my son, but he was so excited about the birthday. In his eyes, birthdays are still magical, and I felt this overwhelming sense of guilt. Part of me didn't want to celebrate at all. It just felt like another day, but I couldn't let him down. So we did have a little celebration after dinner with cupcakes, and he was happy. Seeing his joy reminded me that even in the toughest moments, there's always something to hold on to. Children have this incredible way of seeing the world through a lens of hope and excitement, even when everything else feels heavy. And for a moment, I allowed myself to get swept up in that. It didn't erase the pain, but it lightened it a little bit. Luckily, I had a couple of presents because he kept asking about that. You know, presents are important for kids. So I had to explain to him that one just doesn't get presents. Someone needs to buy them for you. And I did not get one from Alan this year. He tried something that didn't work out, and he was just going to draw me something, I think. But I'm not sure if he has not finished it or even started it. Either way, there was nothing there on my birthday. Which sucks because he used to shower me with little attentions, and things have changed since he's been in general population. But that's a story for another episode. It's funny, no matter how much you prepare yourself for disappointment, it still hurts. I tell myself that it's okay, that gifts don't really matter, but it's not about the gift itself, it's about the reminder of what life is now, the things that are beyond our control. That's the hardest part of loving someone behind bars. The constant reminders that life keeps moving, even when it feels like we are standing still. There's a kind of vulnerability that comes with not having the person you love share these moments with you in the way you'd both like to. Vulnerability in knowing that no matter how much they want to be there, they can't. It's an aching kind of love, one that's filled with longing and loss, but also with hope. Because as hard as it is, there's still that small voice inside of me that holds on to the belief that one day things will be different. That maybe, just maybe, we'll have more than just letters and phone calls to share. All in all, it was an okay day. Nothing out of the ordinary, just another day in this chapter of my life. But deep down, I know it wasn't really just another day. It was another year without Alan here. Another year of holding on to hope for better days ahead. And as much as I tell myself not to focus on the missing pieces, it's hard not to. The absence is always there, in the quiet moments, in the things unsaid. But even through that, I hold on. Because if there's one thing that life has taught me, it's how to endure. As difficult as it can be to navigate the emotional milestones like birthdays, there are way more aspects of life behind bars that often go unnoticed. For example, the role of prison labor. For many people on the outside, it's a hidden world, but it's time we shed light on how this system really works and who it benefits. Let's dig into the truth about prison labor programs and the exploitation of incarcerated individuals, because this issue runs much deeper than most realize. Welcome to a new segment, Mythbuster. This is Mythbuster, Prison Labor. So the myth is, inmates don't work hard and spend their day lounging around, doing nothing, watching TV, eating snacks. Yeah, we all have heard that. Many people believe that incarcerated individuals have a life of leisure, with little to no responsibilities or work during their time in prison. In reality, most incarcerated individuals are required to work under conditions that can be physically, emotionally, and financially demanding. Let's break down some of the realities. Most prisons operate labor programs where incarcerated individuals are required to work, and the scope of these jobs can be surprising to those on the outside. They are often tasked with basic facility maintenance such as cleaning, laundry, or kitchen work. In addition, many state and federal prisons have industries where incarcerated people work in manufacturing, agriculture, or construction. For example, they might produce license plates, furniture, or textile for government use. The more controversial aspect of this is the involvement of private companies in prison labor, which falls under the umbrella of the prison industrial complex. companies can contract prison labor for a fraction of the cost it would require to hire non-incarcerated workers. This creates a system where incarcerated individuals are contributing to major industries, sometimes even working for well-known brands, yet they are rarely given the skills or opportunities that might help them post-release. Despite the labor they perform, incarcerated individuals are paid shockingly low wages. In some states, they can earn as little as 14 cents per hour, with a few lucky ones making up to 63 cents, far below the federal minimum wage. More than far below, like shockingly, horribly below the minimum wage. And that's if the incarcerated individuals are even paid anything, because some states force them to work but doesn't pay them at all, which is the case in Florida, where my husband is, and he's working and he makes zero, nada, nothing. In federal prisons, the wage rate is slightly higher but still abysmally low. Even though the amount may seem insignificant, the money the incarcerated earn is often essential for purchasing personal items like soap, toothpaste, or extra food from the commissary. And you know they need the extra food because the state meals are not enough to feed a man. If most of the time the people outside are supporting their loved one inside financially, their salary can be a bit help and afford them extra little things that their family can't afford. Maybe they pay their commissary themselves to allow their family to put money on the phone. But in some cases, they use their wages to support their family on the outside, adding an extra layer of financial strain for themselves. It's not the most common situation, but it exists and deserves to be mentioned. When my husband was on death row, he could not work, but he had some people sending him money, and he literally stopped eating commissary for a while, just so he could save money to pay the notary for our wedding. He also saved some money later for me to have once I moved to the United States. But back to the actual salaries. What's often overlooked is that prison itself may also take deductions from these wages for things like restitution, court fees, or even room and board, leaving inmates with even less to spend on essentials. This creates a cycle of financial hardship that persists even after release. Unlike free world workers, incarcerated individuals do not enjoy the same protections or rights in the workplace. They cannot unionize or negotiate for better working conditions, and they certainly don't have the right to strike, no matter how poor the conditions are. This means they are often subjected to dangerous environments without the option to refuse or request safer conditions. Injuries on the job are common, and while they are injured, medical care is often delayed or inadequate. Incarcerated people have shared stories of being forced to continue working through illnesses or injuries, and the physical and mental toll of this can be devastating. There are virtually no avenues for them to file grievances without facing retaliation, leaving them in a constant state of vulnerability in the workplace. Prison labor is often claimed as rehabilitative, with some programs teaching skills like carpentry, welding, or even coding. While this may sound promising, the reality is more complex. Not all incarcerated individuals have access to these programs, and those who do might not receive training that is up to industry standards. Even if they do manage to gain valuable skills, they often face overwhelming barriers to employment after release. Many employers are hesitant to hire formerly incarcerated individuals, even if they have work experience and certification from their time in prison. This leads to a paradox where incarcerated are told that their labor is meant to prepare them for life after release, but in practice, the opportunities often fall short. For those who aren't part of formal labor programs, life inside is still far from easy. There's a common misconception that incarcerated people spend their time lounging around, but the truth is that prison is an incredibly isolating and stressful environment. Most incarcerated individuals spend their days managing fear, stress, and boredom. Many choose to focus on self-improvement, reading books, or writing letters to loved ones, or pen pals. Others participate in religious services, therapy, or educational programs when they are available. These activities help to break up the monotony and provide a sense of purpose. But they don't erase the harsh realities of life behind bars, where even basic things like privacy, freedom of movement, and personal safety are luxuries rather than givens. One of the most overlooked aspects of prison labor is the human drive behind it. While prison labor is often framed as exploitation, and in many cases it is, it's also a way for incarcerated to regain a sense of purpose. Many of them take pride in the work they do, despite the low wages and difficult conditions. For some, it's a way to contribute something meaningful, whether to their facility or to society at large. Others use the work as a coping mechanism, a way to maintain structure and sanity in an otherwise chaotic and dehumanizing environment. In the face of a system designed to strip them of their autonomy and worth, many incarcerated individuals find dignity in their labor, even though it's rarely recognized by the outside world. As you think about these realities, it is important to step back and reflect on the bigger picture. Prison labor isn't just about incarcerated people being forced to work. It's about how this labor is tied into the broader economy and how it raises serious ethical questions. The exploitation of incarcerated individuals for profit, often with little regard for their rights or well-being, is something we should all question. What does it say about a society when companies can profit from cheap, often coerced labor from those who are already at their most vulnerable? This isn't just a distant issue happening behind closed doors. It's one that affects us all. The goods produced by prison labor end up in our homes, businesses, and public institutions. So we need to ask ourselves, is this fair? Is this just? There are ways to push for change. We can support initiatives that advocate for fair wages for incarcerated, fight for better working conditions, and push for meaningful post-release employment support. By standing with incarcerated individuals, we can work toward a system that values rehabilitation and human dignity over exploitation. Change starts with awareness, and by engaging with these issues, we can be part of that change. That is it for today's episode of The Locked Door. We've explored both the personal and systemic impacts of incarceration, from the emotional weight carried by families waiting on the outside to the exploitation of those working behind bars. These aren't easy topics, but they're essential ones. I hope this episode has given you some new perspective and made you think critically about the prison system and its impact on all of us, not just those directly affected. Remember, change starts with awareness. If today's discussion moved you, there are ways you can get involved, whether it's supporting efforts to push for better wages and working conditions for incarcerated, or simply sharing what you've learned with others. Here's our quote for today. It is said that no one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. Nelson Mandela. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, keep questioning, keep challenging, and keep pushing for justice. I'll see you in the next episode.